What is the best comeback that works against all insults? I bet that sounded a lot cooler in your head. This is how nearly all the top comments looking to one-up or utilize techniques of narcissistic abuse sound to me so far. It reminds me that the neckbeard script is the result of lowest common denominators curating a list of insults that must have felt particularly devastating when someone said it to them, and so think it will be even awesomer when they use it on someone else, but in reality hits like a 90 seconds rap PSA about using crosswalks. Anytime my mom would get called names or insulted, she'd shrug and just say everybody's gotta be something. I like this one actually. I feel like it's the least argumentative comeback here. Deflecting people or responding with a witty thing can just rile them up. Source: Psycho Family as. They take it the same way as being ignored. This one gives a sort of illusion that you accept what they've said and have already moved on from it. Like, I heard what you said, I've taken it in, and I let it go before the bully really has a chance to process it themselves. I feel like there's still room for reconciliation after this response. It's important to remember the other person in these situations, not because we should be empathetic towards their abusive choices, but because we should be empathetic towards their lead-up emotions. My 5-year-old says mean things sometimes because he hasn't practiced patience and understanding enough. He's learned how to properly react, but he's not mature enough to utilize it properly every time he gets worked up. This is not unexpected of a 5-year-old. A lot of people much older than 5 also are similarly emotionally immature. My husband didn't have much practice with patience before he met me. 10 years later and he's all mellowed out. I'm not perfect, of course, but I am confident in my ability to stay cool in the face of craziness, which helps me remember to think of the other person. When my husband used to get irrationally upset about tiny things and then redirect that upsetness at me, I always considered that he may literally never have had the chance to learn these things before meeting me. He was, emotionally, a 5-year-old. I can't expect greatness until he's had the opportunity to learn how to be great in the first place. Although, I don't put myself through abuse for the sake of another person's learning experience. If I ever feel unsafe or uncomfortable in an abusive situation, I just leave. That's with my 5-year-old and my husband. I always tell my son, you've got a little body, but huge emotions, so sometimes they spill out a little bit. I don't want you to hurt me and regret it later. As soon as you're done letting those emotions out, I'll come in and hug you. Just yell for me. Then he screams into his pillow or destroys some Lego structures and calls me in to comfort him when he doesn't feel like those emotions are spilling out as much. At the end of his anger outbursts, he always cries in regret for having been angry in the first place. That vulnerability point is where we practice coping mechanisms for his anger. I saw similar emotions in my husband 10 years ago, albeit less obvious. Angry adults are, internally, little 5-year-olds whose emotions are spilling over, and they're scared. Not an excuse, but a shining light onto the anger process in their brains. Not sure where this rant came from today, but here it is. Haha, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. He never permanently destroys anything nor harms himself during this. We've practiced together. Once I saw Aida post where a bride was jealous of a guest because she was too beautiful and stole her day, even if she was perfectly elegant and she was insulting her. The bride told her, "So next time, can I come to your wedding in a wedding gown?" The guest replied, "If you think it'll help." And I found that epic. Oh my God, that's hilarious. I'm planning my wedding right now, and I've had a few family members and bridesmaids reach out to me with their outfits, afraid they'll upstage me. I tell them, if you can upstage that giant gown, feel free. Haha, want everyone to look beautiful in the pictures I look back on 20 years from now. Well, I guess what everyone says about you is true. My dad told me to say this, and the typical bully type will generally go crazy thinking everyone talks about them behind their back. I once heard someone drop the, I used to defend you when everyone would say how awful you are, but I guess I was wrong when someone was being Thai. The sad thing is, it was a true statement. I don't recall seeing the head around too much after that. Must have hit hard. The bully will not think that. People do not often bully someone who can easily get in their heads. They bully people who they've invalidated for some reason or another. If you want to communicate anything to a bully, even something smug or insulting, you're going to need to get them to validate you for at least a moment. My vote for best comeback would be, "Are you okay?" It subverts their bullying into a cry for help, and cannot be taken at face value without them validating you as someone worth being vulnerable with. There is the one major tactical error with, "Are you okay?" which is that the bully can potentially use it as a setup for, "Yeah, I'm fine, but you're not going to be," and then escalate the situation as a means of self-sabotage and to assertively reject the opportunity presented to them to be vulnerable as a sign of strength. Hold a stare and blank face for at least 3 seconds, and then ask in a concerning tone, "Are you okay?" I used this on Reddit a while back. The person whom I asked flipped out. They went through my posts and started replying to everything. I sometimes think about them and honestly wonder if they got help. I reached out via Messenger and said if they needed to talk, I was there for them. They took that even worse. The sad part is I meant it. To me, we were having an academic discussion in our science. To him, I was attacking his manhood, his intellect, and his very way of life. Oddly enough, he kept bringing up molestation. When I explained that I had a PhD in the related field and had several publications on the topic at hand and supplied citations for all my facts, he stated raving about men's rights and no one cares about the little boys who get molested and false rape allegations. That's when I asked if he was okay, and he went from WF to lunatic. We were originally talking about the evolution and milk. Now I delete all my posts after a few months, especially anything that has personal info. Big fan of the pause for a beat deadpan, and then some variation, combo of "You done? Feel better now? Got that out of your system?" Just that pause and little bit of patronizing tone while dismissing the childlike behavior usually does more to the ego than a counter insult. I'm a woman and my job basically boils down to arguing with attorneys who are mostly men with huge egos and a large helping of disdain for people they deem beneath them. It's common for them to get pushy, loud, and insulting when they're not getting their way. That was intimidating at first, but now I look forward to it because it gives me an opportunity to use my favorite line. "It sounds like you're getting a little emotional about this. Do you want to call me back when you've calmed down so we can get this done?" This is always met with a delicious pause, followed by them either hanging up or launching into the most high-pitched screeching you've ever heard. Being called emotional by a woman who is perfectly calm breaks something in them, and it's my favorite thing. I did this to a teacher in 8th grade. It was the end of the day. They gave us free time for the last few minutes. It was 2, maybe 3 minutes before the bell. I pack up my things and stand up and go by the door. It's like a minute at this point, and I'm being told to go sit back down, and I'm just saying, "Really? It's a minute." Goes back and forth a few times, and I go sit back down. The teacher tried to pull the "what would your parents think if I called and told them," and I called their bluff and told them to go for it. So they held me back after CL, waited until everyone was gone, and started yelling at me saying things like I have a horrible attitude and went on. Essentially, I'm in hole and they're getting some other frustration out on me. They finally get to a point where they stop for a good moment and I just deadpan look them in the eyes. "You done? Can I go?" I got expelled shortly after for a bad attitude and not doing my homework. Earnestly ask them if they are okay. Leader, being in the trades gets you some good practice in comebacks. I'm an electrical apprentice, and when I first started there was a bit of hazing and teasing from the journeyman. It never got to bad, mostly a lot of talk. One in particular was kinda on me one day, and since he was fairly young, just recently licensed, I just responded like, "Did someone treat you like this when you were an apprentice? Do you have some unresolved issues? Do you need a hug?" Oddly, he never really responded, but I didn't have any trouble with him anymore. On the same job, the excavator accidentally broke our grounding grid, a big underground copper cable grid used to ground all the structures in the substation. So, I had to jump down, in the rain, into the hole to patch it up. It was wet and muddy, but I was wearing a full rain suit. Another, older, journeyman who was my foreman and had worked for my father more than once made a sarcastic remark along the lines of, "We should take a picture. Wouldn't your daddy be proud?" I just looked up at him and said, "Well, I'm doing my job, I'm doing it well, and I'm nodding and complaining about it." Yeah, he likely would be proud. I also had another apprentice yell at me, "Stop talking to me like I'm a ing moron," to which I responded, "Stop talking to me like you're a ing moron." I did kinda provoke him, but he was being really dense. Back when I lived with a roommate, she had her brother and his new girlfriend over one day. The brother and I had an inside joke that we exchanged while they were visiting. It was really stupid. It was basically an exaggerated Reese Witherspoon impression. Doesn't matter, it was totally innocent and meant nothing more. Apparently his girlfriend was the jealous type, like a dude in his sleep, jealous. I get a text later that night and she must have grabbed his phone while he was sleeping and was saying that she knows what we meant by our little exchange and I'd better watch out and don't ever talk to him again. All the classic crazy girlfriend. She completely blew up my phone, seriously, like, at least 100 texts within about 30 minutes talking about how she's gonna kick my next time she sees me. I don't reply to any of them except for one text message back that only contained links for the mental health clinic here in town and a link to a page about how to get help for bipolar disorder. Not a single text back. Complete silence after that. I said this to an EMT once. I'm an easygoing guy who will try to be nice to anyone I work with because I don't want to get tangled up in other people's emotional problems. We were on the scene first for a call and the ambulance showed up second. I stayed outside to help bring in the stretcher. The door locked behind the others who went on ahead, so when we got to the door we couldn't get in. When no one came to the knock, I suggested an alternate route in the building. The EMT snapped at me saying that was the stupidest thing she had ever heard. I literally just suggested the front door instead of the side. I just looked at her and sincerely asked, "Are you okay? Has it been a long night? How can I help you?" And she literally just completely disengaged and stopped talking. It was perfect because it made her feel ridiculous and I wouldn't get any blowback for unprofessionalism on a scene. And basically takes all the wind out of their sails. They want to get a rise out of you and responding like this doesn't give them the satisfaction. This reminds me of when I was in high school and at a party. I called dibs on next round of beer pong. After the game finished, I started setting up the table and a kid who I didn't get along with came over and said, "Hey, let me play." I told him I called next dibs. He said if I didn't let him go first, I was a little. I told him, "Guess I'm a little then." He went quiet and stared at me, then just walked away. Gotta keep it calm. My friend recently messaged me because they thought they had been in hole. She blew up at someone who was saying mean about kids with learning disabilities. I told her I think it's perfectly fine to be rude to or call out someone being in hole, but you've gotta do it calmly. Stay calm, be short and pointed with what you say. If you get all hyped up, you just end up looking unreasonable, volatile, and it diverts everyone thinking the original person is whole onto you. Well, that's just like your opinion, man. I like to use this one especially when people are arguing their opinions are objective facts, usually on TPAT, and often punctuated were pointing out why what they're saying is just an opinion. Works best when anyone can see that the thing they are trying to argue over has basically no impact on anything. Just laugh out loud. If someone's trying to make you mad, acting like nothing they've said matters to you in the least, and their best attempts at making you feel bad are laughable, will really take the wind out of their sails. I've done it. It's immensely satisfying. I once got punched in the face by a guy who had started trying to bully me in 7th grade. I don't know why, but I just started laughing. That uncontrollable, "This isn't funny and it's not appropriate to laugh right now, but there's no way to stop it" type laugh. It wasn't intentional and I wasn't trying to freak the guy out, but he turned beet red, mumbled that I was a psycho, and stalked away. He wouldn't even make eye contact with me through the end of high school, so that worked out well. Where I trained, there was an old joke we used to say. Long-winded, but here you go. A young man goes to the circus on a first date and is sat on the ringside watching the acts when the clowns came in. One clown looked at the young man and steams over to him, getting right in his face. "Off, go on, get out." Embarrassed, the man leaves his date and leaves the circus. Full of shame and anger, he decides he's never going to be spoken to and belittled like that again. He studies hard, becomes a litigation lawyer, and becomes world famous in his field. He becomes known as the man who wins every case and can make grown men cry with just a withering look, but he can never forget the shame at his treatment from the clown. Many, many years after his initial visit at the circus, he returns, all prepared to get his own back, and finally, his moment arrives. The clowns walk into the ring. The clown immediately spots him and steams right over, getting in his face again. "I told you before, off. Go on, Get out! The man stands up, the shame from all those years ago rising in him. He draws a deep breath, looks the clown straight in the eye and stutters. Off big nose. Told you it was long-winded, and also not terribly funny. However, it became the stock response in the workshop whenever someone needed putting in their place with an insult, and never failed to make the workshop laugh. Your mother should have eaten you while your bones were still soft. One of the nurses in our office would say about her kids, I should have drowned them while they still fit in the tub, in a Louisiana accent. She was a wonderful mother and nurse, but it always cracked me up, having kids about the same age. My dad told me to respond to bullying by saying, sorry about your family situation, and walk away, looking very sympathetic and sad. Like you understand and it's okay. I've caused a few breakdowns for sure. One of my main bullies got to me. There was a rumor going around that his dad was super abusive. He called me fat for the trillionth time, and I turned and said, I see why your dad hits you now, duding freak Lamau. I'm a girl, so he didn't beat me up. Hope he's doing better. Still kind of feel bad for snapping in that way. No one deserves to be beaten by a parent. Sorry, what did you say? So that they'll have to repeat themselves usually take the mojo out of things. I knew a girl who used to do this to guys who tried to chat her up or ask her out. She'd make them repeat everything, disturb the pace of the encounter, ask them why, generally just be disruptive to what they were doing. In itself, that's okay if it's only once or twice, or just with the guys who weren't conducting themselves well, but she did it with every single guy. I had stopped hanging out with that group, but apparently like 3 years later she realized that she hadn't been on a date in years just because she had a bad habit. Just walk away while they are talking. It's probably the rudest thing you can do. Plus, you save your time, and if they call you a coward, smile in evil joy, as you know they'll be thinking about this for the rest of the week. This is the best way to handle 99% of problems. Someone trying to dump their negative emotions on you, make them mad, and enjoy it. Not only will they have failed, but now you're smiling. Somebody honks at you on the road? Don't get mad, go 5 miles per hour. Make eye contact in the mirror. Enjoy their frustration. Your mother was a hamster and your father smelled of elderberries. Shut your festering gob, ya tit. Your type really makes me puke, you vacuous, coffee-nosed, malodorous pervert. From the Monty Python argument sketch. Actually used this in college against a friend who was making obnoxious comments. Another friend a game of chess, plus he kept trying to move the pieces. The cool thing was that the other player also knew the sketch, so we were both shouting it at obnoxious friend in unison and increasing volume. He looked embarrassed and left. Literally just laugh. I've caught so many people off guard by laughing at the insults they try on me. Insults to me are either so creative or so unoriginal that I find them hilarious. I did this more or less by accident once in high school. The purely verbal bully said a line that was actually mildly clever. He probably heard it somewhere, and when my reaction was purely to say, with genuine enjoyment, that was actually kind of funny. He had no idea what to do next. Never bullied me again. That was the second most instant bully deflation I experienced. The anti-comeback is my favorite. A light breeze has more effect on me than someone insulting or bullying me these days. I couldn't tell you what the last 5 or 10 people in my life that tried to publicly humiliate me even looked like. I never looked at them. What they were saying never made me miss a beat in whatever I was doing. They get so mad every time, try to bait me a few times, and then eventually give up. Meanwhile, everyone around me can hear and see what's happening. There's only one person that everyone is witnessing making it of themselves, and it's not me. This, the no reaction, is the best reaction. I don't even entertain talkers, and if anything, let them have their moment, as it gives a decent perspective as to where their heads are at. I moved into a new neighborhood a few years back and have no idea what I did to get on one of my neighbor's bad side. I've moved every 18 months of my life since birth and lived all over the world, and it wasn't until almost 40 that I came across the most vile and disturbed neighbor I've ever had. Shortly after moving in, got invited to a little get-together, and dude was projecting for almost an hour straight, giggling and laughing his off the whole time, trying to get a rise out of me. He had spent some time looking me up online and was boasting about things he had found. I'm a former celebrity overseas and my life is an open book and have had a few stalkers in the past. This guy took the prize for the most obsessed and weirdest interaction I've ever had when first meeting someone, let alone a new neighbor. Thanks to them, I cleaned up my online presence as I am no longer famous, was a long time ago, and don't bother with people younger than me anymore. We would have neighborhood watch meetings and the guy or his boyfriend would make snide remarks about my son's attire. I never gave them the time of day and everyone could see them festering from their weird obsession with being so negative. I'm a pretty self-aware dude and know if I'm committing a social faux pas. This dude apparently isn't. Let them keep talking without engaging and it will speak volumes about them versus whatever it is they're accusing or bullying you for. In weirdos. Alright, I will share this S-tier comeback with you all. Be careful using it because it's illegal in a lot of places, and for good reason. During the dispute, you simply need to ask calmly and genuinely, why are you making your voice deeper? Your opponent is simply unable to talk properly afterwards. If they try, just continue to gaslight them into thinking they are. There is simply no further retort, the dispute is over. There is no single best comeback that works against all insults, as different insults require different responses depending on the context and the individual involved. However, a general strategy for responding to insults is to avoid reacting emotionally and instead respond calmly and confidently. This can involve using humor to deflect the insult, questioning the validity of the insult, or simply ignoring the insult altogether. Ultimately, the most effective response will depend on the specific situation and the individual involved, and it's important to remember that not all insults require a response. For me, racial slurs never have been a trigger at this point. I've been called all of them due to no one knowing what race I am, and my patience while being insulted either confuses or makes them more angry while I'm just taking verbal abuse. I'm a light brown Thai Asian, but I have the mannerisms and accent, according to my friends, of every race of a white American dude, and my looks do not scream Asian. I think this is because my eyes do not have an evident Asian look. As such, I've been confused for Japanese, Chinese, Australian, Burmese, Cuban, Mexican, Brazilian, Iraqi, Afghan, Black, African, Egyptian, French, Scottish, Eskimo. Inuit is correct. Eskimo is a slur, and the most stupid one, Muslim. Yes, a person said I looked like a Muslim as if it was a race. Of course, the moment I start talking, having a Michigan accent throws off most people. Angry at me as they either try to comprehend what race I am and what insult to use against me, or most of the time, I bring them back to reality and they are trying to figure out whether it's worth wasting more energy. More they caught themselves before saying something worse. I might make eye contact and not say or do anything. I really don't care what your thoughts are about anything at all. Can be perceived as cold, but I have way more productive things to do with my time than care about the little utterances of other people and their negativity. Now, if it's true about me and I care about the person, I'll own up to it and apologize. I go with the flow. I've kind of mastered the art of not giving a Christ. Knowing me, I might start twerking. I don't know how to, but I might try and walk away whistling, refocusing on what's important. Life's too short to care about the drummed-up drama in people's brains. One of my favorite quotes is, "Great minds discuss ideas. Average minds discuss events. Small minds discuss people." Eleanor Roosevelt.